So, thank you everyone for joining us. And this is the member led session uh, titled Uniting Voices Building Strategic Alliances for Policy Impact. And this session will be moderated by Dr. Mariana Lechi, who is the Director of Program with the Center for Economic and Social Rights and the founder of Writing Society SRL. Prior to joining CESR, Dr. Lechi was ACT Alliance's Global Advocacy and Development Policy Manager. Dr. Lechi is a lawyer, researcher, and activist with over 20 years of professional experience across the legal, academic, and development sectors. Mariana worked as a freelance consultant inter alia for Concord Europe and for the ACT Alliance's Gender Justice Program. Prior to that, she was Christian Aid's strategic advisor on women's right, power, and poverty. Mariana holds a postdoctorate certificate in human rights and democracy from the Faculty of Law from the University of Coimbra, a PhD in development studies from Birkbeck, an LLM from Cornell Law School, and an LLB from the University of Candido Mendes. Over the past few years, Dr. Lechi has been primarily concerned with the intersectionality, especially with regards to human rights and public policy. During her postdoctorate, she investigated the impact of multinational corporations on the concept of gender equality using the literature on legal pluralism. Dr. Lechi co edited a volume entitled Writing the Economy Towards People's Recovery from Economic and Environmental Crisis, launched by Agenda Publishing in January 2024. And with this, I hand over to you, Mariana, for the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ipshita, and thank you very much to all the GNDR colleagues, both the Secretariat for organizing the summit, but also for the invitation, of course, and for all the members for joining today. It's a real big pleasure, because beyond all the things that Ipshita mentioned, I'm also very proud to be a trustee of GNDR. So I'm happy to be part of this this journey together in this very challenging yet important moment. So today, colleagues, we will be talking about building strategic alliances for policy impact. So the whole idea is to unite voices towards the same direction. This session explores how civil society drives inclusive disaster risk reduction and climate policies through regional collaboration, highlighting local organizations' roles in shaping policy, mobilizing resources, and fostering community-driven solutions. This session addresses their layered risks, operational burdens, and strategies to amplify local voices, strengthen advocacy, and influence sustainable, equitable policy frameworks. Of course, this is very complex, and I think many of you on the call, beyond those on the panel, are experts in your own right. And I feel very humbled and proud to be part of this wise group. I think what we see now structurally is that we have a very strong pushback in terms of the rights that we have fought for and won. Also on the narratives in terms of what should be prioritized and what should not be prioritized, and who takes the lead, which is, I think, it's key to what we're talking about. So when we're talking about disaster risk reduction, who takes the lead? What does it mean to have that leadership, and what does it mean to be locally driven? Because there is also a challenge today, particularly in the agenda localization, and I can say that from the perspective of someone who's been sitting in Brussels, from the perspective of those that are involved in the Europe-wide discussions, or particularly the European Union discussions, that term can be used in very different ways. So I think it's very important for GNDR and its members to have a strategic role in terms of determining that pathway and being very clear and positioned, not only in terms of the policy perspective, but also in terms of the practice. I don't want to extend too much, because I think we have a wealth of knowledge here in the panel. And I think we're also very proud now that we have a new GNDR strategy. There is quite a lot to say in terms of the added value and the strategic role that GNDR has to play now, particularly this moment in time where we see a myriad of conflicts, investments that are going towards the maintenance or the sustaining of these conflicts rather than necessarily putting resources into shifting our planetary crisis, addressing the drivers of climate change, and the drivers of disaster. So without further ado, I will introduce our panel. I am having a slight technical challenge in terms of accessing their very comprehensive and impressive biography. So I will take the liberty, colleagues, and also for the interest of time, of introducing them and, uh, broadly, and then I hope that I will, in time, get them to speak a little bit more about their own backgrounds, because I think that also can be very powerful. So we will have three speakers today. We have Karmit Lubanov from Belgium. We have Aisha Mohammed Ahmed Tawab from Yemen and Christine Yakahama from Kenya. It was this first session, the first intervention will be from Aisha. So Aisha, I will hand over to you in a little bit, and it will be on operationalizing risk-informed resilience through local leadership. Aisha, you have 7 minutes, please, and I will keep you posted about time, if that's okay, via the chat box, and I might also unmute. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm very happy because I'm speaking in work of protection. Really, I'm speak with you from Yemen. You know, in Yemen there is overlap of the risk, overlap of the problem. I can speak from my presentation. Uh, um, if you have presentation by you, Ipista, or I can speak quickly. Fragile and conflict in Yemen. As I mentioned, we have conflict, climate shock, food security, displacement, communities live at the risk daily at the risk. So we often hear a strong commitment to localization, but in practice, there is still a significant gap. Local organizations are expected to deliver programs, manage the risk, access communities, and respond quickly in crisis. Yet, at the same time, they are excluded from decision making, underfunded, and overburdened with the compliance and risk. In many cases, local actors face risk from de facto authority, community pressure, and even international system. Local organizations carry the work and the risk, while others often retain the power and visibility. This gap directly affects our ability to operationalize the risk-informed resilience because early warning comes from the communities. Risk analysis is strongest at the local level, and early action must happen quickly. But if a local actor don't have decision making, flexible resource, and the trust, how can we can respond quickly? Then early warning does not translate into early action. So the issue is not technical; it is about power and system. After more than 3 decades of work in humanitarian development and peace building in Yemen, we have engaged with many donors and international organizations, and we have observed a clear disconnected in many cases. Donors themselves as increasingly supportive of localization and understand it's important. However, at the intermediate level, where international organizations operate, there is often a gap between commitment and practice. We see strong language on localization, but really limited transfer to decision making power. heavily compliance requirement that shift risk to all time for the local actors, and partnership model that treat local organization as implementers only rather than leader. At times, it feels as though local organizations are expected to carry the operational burden while the being constrained by systems that do not fully trust or empower them. This is not just a technical issues. I stress and put three line. This is not just a technical issues. It is a systemic issues of power, incentive, and accountability. We need to put accountability as equity between the international and the local. And the result is that localization become a statement rather than practice. To operationalize the risk informed resilience, we must rethinking about the partnership. Should share power, not just responsibility, reduce the risk for local actors, not transfer it, ensure fair resource allocation, recognize local knowledge as expert. Localization is not about implementation, it is about leadership and ownership. Remove colonial and bureaucratic structure imposed by intermediate international organization. Move from the control to trust. Move from compliance to shared accountability. Move from rhetoric to real power shift. And move from the short intervention to long intervention, long term strategy intervention, because we need the impact on the community. So we need to use the Nexus approach. In apps ado in apps development organization for development, we start as initiative with the Nexus Yemen initiative. As you see, we linking between the humanitarian and development and peace supporting. So we do a lot in the climate change and do a lot in the crisis, and we do on the crisis. We uh, do money capacity building for the communities, and we see our impact from the small project and small money. But we need to use the good way and good style our tools to do intervention and humanitarian assistance like Nix's approach. We've now found arrived to phase two. In this phase, we found a lot of evidence why we lost money dollars in Yemen in the humanitarian only, because we left the humanitarian and peace building. We left the climate change. But now we call all the donors and international to use this approach. Nix's approach is very important principle and tools to make impact and solve many roots of problem in the country that have humanitarian assistance. As you know, the true humanity is not measure how many number of the cases help with the package of distribution of food security, but they number of families left out of poverty, the number of families become independent on themselves. This is what I say in this session. The problem with current model: local actor implementer, international actor decision making. This must change. This must change really, and we need to use the principle of localization and principle of nexus approach. Also, I have anticipatory action in practice, act before crisis acceleration, livelihood support, wash intervention, protection action, fast local constitutional decision. The nexus approach linking between humanitarian and development and peace. This is put it us in many case study and many success story for this intervention by this approach. So I call for all international and donor to thinking about this approach. It is the most beautiful approach in the conflict country or in the poor country. Ensure sustainability and long-term impact is very important for us. Women lead action also, we need to put the woman in the heart of any intervention for more inclusive sustainability. No resilience without local leadership. Accountability systems are often designed to control local actors rather than ensure accountability to affected communities or affected people. So in this speak, I hope from our network gender to put the nexus approach and localization in the heart of the intervention and do many advocacy for this, because a local actor have a lot of risk and a lot of border to do intervention in the conflict and in many risk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aisha, and thank you for doing a wonderful timekeeping from your side. You were very sharp on the 7 minutes, but also thank you so much for bringing the structural issues and very important points such as the real ownership. What does it mean to have real ownership and meaningful leadership? So I will, as I said, colleagues, I'm having a little technical challenge here, so I cannot access the bios. So I will move on and ask the speakers to please introduce themselves. But if I can also ask Ipshita or the team to add the bios here, because they have very impressive bios, and I would like to make sure everyone knows of it. So I, without further ado, I will just mention one thing that, as has already signaled in the chat, it would be great for colleagues to already flag to us if you have questions. And we'll try to manage our time the best we can to ensure that as many questions as possible can be raised and answered in conversation towards the end. So without further ado, I will then hand over to Karmit Lubanov, who's from the director from the Tandari Center. And thank you so much for being with us. Karmit will be talking about climate risk and climate security in Euromed region, particularly from a socioeconomic approach. Thank you so much for being with us. And again, you have 7 minutes.
Or would you like me to? Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, so this is the title and the subtitle: What might be the scientific basis for building workable strategic collaboration in the era of climate change? Next one. Can I just? Okay, so this is to summarize what we have done, is what we have learned from our research work for the last, I think, 3-4 years in the applied context of the DRR. First is the knowledge, which is importance of the climate inequality component in climate policy formulation, and of course addressing it. The second one is understanding the need regarding regional collaboration to strengthen national climate resilience. And the third one is the importance of cross-sectoral and cross-country collaboration in a shared geographical region. Please, next. Can I use it? I see. So the rest, in a very brief way, I'm going to present one segment of few segments of this project. The research frame suggesting to examine the goals agreed upon Paris in 2015 in the terminology of mitigation of climate risk and adaptation to climate security, and not only as it was prevailing mitigation of what's called the greenhouse gas and also adaptation for and to propose the outline that is challenging the 2030 goals and beyond in a regional prism. The specific study to be presented deals with climate crisis and the interlinkages about socio-political, among others. For example, what are the characteristics of climate vulnerability per country, and can we learn from this national characteristic? Sorry. Can we learn from this national characteristic how to produce a climate resilience in a broad context, which in our case is the regional climate policy, in order to reduce the gaps between countries in Euromed region, specifically between neighboring countries. Based on the findings so far that I will present in a minute, the following points to be discussed should be that the physical aspect of climate change cannot be addressed separately from the socio-political context and the inequality. It's very relevant for conflict regions, for disaster risk regions. Mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions should be addressed in a broad socio-political context to turn the equation from climate risk to regional climate security into tangible, sustainable strategy. The second one is what has been found so far. It's a similar climatic behavior patterns for distinct geographical subregion, as I'm going to present in now. So next one is this one. Okay, just an example what I mean. This is the Middle East. This is the Jordan as a case. The climate risk ID of Jordan, again, as an example, is frequent heat wave, erratic rainfall, flash floods, drought encompass climate change in Jordan. The International Monetary Fund says addressing water scarcity in financial sustainable manner will help preserve macroeconomic stability, contain debt pressures. So it's all kind of risk that they should be integrated together with climate action. This is the government will hinder realizing of the SDG target. And here the climate inequality, Jordan is a victim state, not an emitter. Domestic emission account for 0.06% of the global CO2 emissions. Around $7.5 billion needed for mitigation intervention alone. Adaptation might cost more. This, for example, is the inequality dimension, again, part of our very large-scale work. You can see the cross from north to the south of geographical. It can be seen the climatic inequality reflected in two main characteristics. The countries of the South Med, which is on this part of, are identified with low CO2 emission per capita. Their contribution in the global emission is negligible. The second one, the inequality does not refer only to the economical weak countries as the South, the Middle East countries, but also for innovation and adaptation of renewable energy method, as can be seen that in the countries of Northern Europe, Scandinavian countries reduced their share in the global contribution greatly, but emission per capita emission are still high compared to the South. So when you talk about climate era, it's also the consumption is a very important component. And not on the climate inequality, this is something from my other research. A broad-scale empirical study that I conducted has indicated that climate crisis is a multiplier of socioeconomic inequality, practically created new status of climate victim state, therefore require a regional cooperation to the reduction of the inequality and to strengthen the scope of the common geographical space, which is not, for example, the international agreement. So next one is why regional collaboration? Similar to the Jordan Climate ID card, that is global negligible contributor to greenhouse gases, but greatly local affected by climate change and the need for long-term preparation for climate crisis. As the impact of climate change, what we defined does not occur in a physical or political vacuum. No country response will succeed alone. This must be really be emphasized. Therefore, there is a real need to implement a regional approach of mitigation adaptation within the framework of strategic collaboration in the field of mainly technology, climate engineering, agriculture, irrigation, which are very important agriculture irrigation in the Middle East. This approach should be the political climate engine for the Middle East to developing long-term regional cooperation. How can apply this regional? The recent Richard aim to future assessment of mitigation of climate risks, adaptation to climate security. The linkages that I will in a minute will present it should discuss what is the pressure in the context of climate change associated with transboundary challenges, which is not considered now in defined geographical region. As for the South Mediterranean, prospective climate risks include migratories, climate refugee, water stress, and food insecurity were reviewed. What we call, and is something that we can discuss later, the vision for climate regionalism should be designed to strengthen each country commitment towards a climate compatible future. What means regional collaboration towards a climate compatible future? Fundamental assumption is that it is a self-interest of each country in the Middle East region is to address the security implication of climate change by adopting a series of policy measures. It has to be integrated first at the national level, bilateral, regional, multi-level, also implementing the regional perspective, which is not now because I'm familiar with the national strategic for climate in each of the countries in ways that advocates climate leadership position in the Middle East in conjunction to the region's sensitive geopolitical dynamics. This is, for example, strengthen the fact that they can allow even create the platform to collaboration. You can see that at the left side of the graph is the northern countries. It's an axis from north to south, and there is a very similar behavior of countries in diverse parameters. Most of the parameters we were taken from different groups, research group. Not all of us is we calculated. So and there is the parameter is the HIC of the UN climate work, vulnerability, environmental performance of Yale University, state resilience, social cohesion, and economic. So you can see that there is very similar patterns for group of countries. The next one. What we can see from the findings at this stage, it can see that there is a sub-regional geographical profile. In most cases, there is a correlation between the various indicators per country. The findings indicate a clear increase in climate vulnerability along the north-south axis, but also of the resilience. As can see, the findings about disparities between the countries are consistent and in correlation with studies by different and independent research groups. Climate change can evolve into opportunity for working towards geopolitical stability, as opposed to what is now the surrounding to regional instability. The next one, which I'm emphasizing about the civic society, the last one, okay, this one. So what we suggest is the following. The question that currently under research by our team is how one can use regional characterization of groups of countries like sub-region, Middle East, North Mediterranean, whatever, to create better understanding of the following two contexts, which the first one is the regional climate, including policy and legislation, climate migration, climate migrants, need transboundary attention, the role of academic and civic society, which is on our board today, in the current political climate, policymakers alone cannot shift the hostile public discourse surrounding migration, for example. It is imperative that the EU works with academic and civil society leaders who have been proving they have a crucial role to play, not only to create established data, but also when it's come to mobilize this public support. And the third one, which is the obvious, developing database networking should be high priority. So with this, I'm summarized. That's it. I
Thank you
kept
so
the time, yes?
much. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Harmit, for your presentation. Thank you very much for focusing on your perspectives from your research on collaboration, particularly from a regional perspective. I mean, I'm from as a national from Brazil. I'm very much appreciative of that kind of approach, particularly on my own experience with South learning. So thank you so much for that, and for also mentioning things that I think are important in terms of when we're looking at drivers such as macroeconomic stability, debt, financial consolidation, and so forth and so on. And also the advice that I know you're not touching upon that, but that is related to the work I have done and have been connected to, but also some of the advice we get from some international financial institutions that might be then fomenting inequality, which you mentioned as an important driver of climate change. I can see there's quite a lot of some experiences shared in the chat, so I will encourage you to do that. And I think that's wonderful. I will then move us along, before the interest of time, to our last speaker, Christine Yakama, who will be speaking about advocacy and action, enhancing local leadership in disaster risk reduction through better financing and technology. Christine, thank you so much for being with us. I will hand the floor over to you, and I would kindly ask you to please also keep to 7 minutes.
Thank you so much. Good evening, good afternoon. My name is Christine Yahama. Before I begin to talk about policies and frameworks, let me take you to Shingodo in Kakamega County. Early in the morning, before the sun fully rises, a group of women gather at an artisanal mining site. Among them is a mother of three with no protective gear. She steps into a shallow pit, aware that the ground is unstable and that when it rains, the same pit can quickly flood. She is not there by choice alone, but by necessity to provide, to survive. Yet, despite these risks, these women have organized themselves. They share information, support one another, and have begun speaking to local leaders about safety, livelihoods, and recognition. They are not waiting to be rescued, they are already leading. And that is where my presentation begins. Because when we talk about localization and enhancing local leadership, we are talking about people like these women who are already acting, already organizing, but are still waiting for systems, funding, and policies to truly recognize and support their leadership. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share about the work that I'm doing in Shinyalu Sub-County, Kakamega County, western part of Kenya. Enhancing local leadership focus, localization in practice. This is the Kenya context on disaster risk, resilience, and data and technology. Next screen, please. Advocacy and action, enhancing local leadership, localization in practice. Kenya case. The global shift toward localization, as local as possible, as international as necessary. The question is, what does real local leadership look like in practice? What is localization? Shifting power, resources, and decision-making to local actors, recognizing community knowledge and leadership. I can give an example. In Kenya, we have the Constitution 2010, and in the Article 1, it gives sovereign power to the citizens of Kenya. And that's why now you find we are applying the shifting power and resources and decision-making to local actors. This is where now the community is able to create their table with the decision makers. Next slide, please. Beyond participation, we are looking at ownership and control linked to grant bargain and global commitments. Next slide. What does local leadership look like in practice? Here we have community-led planning and priority setting, direct funding to local organizations. In Kenya, the Constitution has given us an opportunity for citizens to participate in the budget making and making process. It is a cycle that happens for 1 year round. And what happens is the community to prioritize what they want the government to do to them. It's more about bottom-top approach, whereby now even communities, we are ensuring that they tap into some of the opportunities of funding that come directly from the county government. Next slide, please. Local governments are coordinating response, inclusion of women, youth, and marginalized groups. Here we have a policy that we've been able to push, and we happen to make it through the Ministry of Gender and Social Services, where we came up with a policy of women and youth and marginalized groups. Here, the marginalized groups you are talking about, people living with disabilities. Next slide. Accountability to communities, not just to donors. This is the Kenya. I've given an example of in Shingoto, in Kakamega, about the artisanal women miners who are facing risks, especially to unsafe conditions. Here we are talking about in the mining sites, they don't have tools that they use during mining. So it has become a disaster to an extent that if you look at some of the houses, they collapse due to lack of proper tools that they are using to drill the gold. Another thing is women normally use bare hands to clean the gold using mercury in the streams. It becomes a challenge. And when they crush the gold, they never cover themselves. So you find majority of them, they have issues with silicosis, and others even give birth to children with defects. And then we have issues of landing. Right now we are facing a lot of landing, effects of climate change. And you find like now when they are cleaning the gold, they normally use the water streams. Now it becomes a challenge, and you find now as they use the mercury to clean the gold, it ends up where they planted their small kitchen gardens. It affects their vegetables to an extent that now we are having people who are now getting most of the cases of cancers. We've tried to see their caused through the mercury that is being passed through the streams. And then in an economic vulnerability, you find like now we have cartels. Cartels normally, when they reach to these women, it reaches a point that now they don't pay them the gold that they've gotten from their farms. It becomes a challenge. So women are vulnerable to an extent that even some women now have to exchange their gold for sex to get money. Next slide. We've been able to come up with groups, organize groups of women, self-help groups, so that now these women, they're able to protect their fellow women. And again, we've been able to improve their livelihoods, whereby right now women are coming up with village saving and lendings. And also, we are trying to recognize their engagement, whereby now we are trying to link them with the county government, whereby right now at the sub-county level, they are able to be in ward climate committees, and also at the sub-county ward climate committees, up to the county level ward committees, whereby right now we are receiving funds from FLOCA, that is the World Bank. It comes to counties in terms of FLOCA, so they are able to influence that funding. Next slide, please. And then we are also doing advocacy for inclusion in policy and resource allocation. In policy, I can say we are able to develop a policy that is jointly with the county government on disaster risk management, and on resource allocation. Women are able to submit memorandums during public participation, whereby now they are pushing for money to go to climate activities, like the example one that I've given you, the FLOCA one. Another one, we've pushed for resources in terms of um, planting of trees, and also protection and conservation of streams. Next slide, please. On domestic resource resilient financing in local context, we've been receiving limited direct funding, especially reaching community level. And here I've given you an example whereby now our county government relies on the national government to give them. The national government borrows money from World Bank. When it comes to the subnational level, it comes in form of a grant. That's why now we have the FLOCA grant that is now supporting these self-help groups of women. My question and my concern is, what will happen? Because right now it's like the donor has given terms of how that money should be repaid from the national level. My concern is, supposing one of these fine days the donors just wake up and say, like the way the Trump went in 2024 last year, they are not funding disaster risk resilience. What will happen? Next slide. Now we are pushing for county-led domestic DRL funds that are flexible, accessible financing for grassroots groups. And then the groups, it should be transparent and tracking of the funds. Here, what I'm trying to say is this. As much as we don't want to rely on donor funds, we are trying to push the Ministry of Water, Energy and Mining, and also disaster, whereby we are pushing the communities to push for allocation to go to disaster. And then now this money, when it comes, we want it to come through these groups. And then what we are doing right now, initially what the county government does, will push for memorandums, money will be allocated. But now when it comes to implementation, it becomes a challenge. So what we are doing now, we've come up with community action teams. We develop with them social audit tools, whereby they are now able to do what we call public expenditure tracking, so that they're able to ensure that the funds reach to them, and they are able to be transparent to the county government and share with them what they are actually doing with the money. Next slide, please. The role of data in local leadership. Here, I've told you we are doing community-generated data, whereby we are mapping risks and vulnerabilities. Out of these findings, now here we are using the community scorecard, whereby we are able to interview the government separately, and then also the community separate group, and then we bring them up together, and then we come up with issues that now we are going to use as evidence for us to push for allocation, that is through advocacy, and also developing of policy. I've told you we developed a policy on disaster risk management. Next slide, please. Some of the challenges that we've been able to experience are: one, limited access to tools, that is data ownership. It has become a challenge. And then we also have another issue about opportunity, whereby local data and power for decision maker, it becomes another concern altogether.
Thank you so much, Christine. Can I just ask you to try to start wrapping up?
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. The role of technology right now, mobile tools for reporting risks and incidences. We've been able to partner with GTZ, and now we are using the community action teams, whereby now in each ward we have lead persons who are helping us map for disaster prone areas, whereby now we are able to prepare in case a disaster wants to come and prevent it before it extrapolates. Next slide. We have digital platforms for coordination and early warning. Here we are using a WhatsApp group where we created between the Ministry of the County Government and citizens, whereby we are also members, and we are highlighting part of the and updating each other on what is happening and what steps we need to take. And also we are having meetings towards the same. And then the risk that we have is the digital divide, excluding vulnerable groups who are not able to afford even mobile phones or also even tablets. It becomes a challenge. Next slide. Gaps in locally led action. Here we have power imbalance in funding structures. And then there's the limited capacity investment in local actors. And then we have tokenistic participation, whereby now the government uses the people who campaign for them to get positions. They normally involve them in public participation. And then now we have weak integration of local bases in national or regional platform. And opportunities for improvement. Here we have a direct funding mechanism for local actors. Here, right now, we are talking about some donors, whereby now we are able to sign MOUs with them between the community, and the government will just be witness. And then now we have strengthened county level government systems, whereby I've told you we are now in key committees like the ward climate committees, all from the ward up to the county level. And then right now we are trying to push for investment in capacity building, where technical plus leadership. Here we are seeing now the county government through the FLOCA, they were able to train ward climate committees. And then now we are also promoting community ownership, and then we are foster partnerships based on trust and equity. And then our advocacy priorities, we are pushing for localization targets in funding, especially now, like we always push for 50% of the funding to go to local actors. That is the groups that we've initiated, the women groups. And then we are trying to influence at the national level, the DRA and climate policies. And then we are strengthening civil society coalitions and amplifying community voices in regional and global platforms. Here I'm talking about the GNDR. We are also members of the forum, and also we are encouraging others to join. And also we have the CSIPM. And then now linking regional and global frameworks, we always implement using the Sindai framework for disaster risk reduction, the African Union agenda, and then we have the Sustainable Development Goals that we are aligning local realities with global commitments. Our call to action is shift from rhetoric to action on localization, fund local leadership, not just projects. Trust communities as partners, not as beneficiaries. Let us build resilience. Local leadership is not a concept. It is the difference between response and resilience. Thank you so much. I welcome any questions.
Thank you so much, Christine, for a very concrete example from Kenya. That's much appreciated. And apologies to all colleagues because we're running quite over. Well, we're running out of time. That's the right word, unfortunately. And I want to stay true to the schedule. So I have picked up one a question in the chat about the role of this summit in tackling structural discrimination. There was a mention particularly on caste-based discrimination, but I think any forms of structural discrimination is definitely relevant because Christine, for example, mentioned patriarchy, for instance, and how women are put in very vulnerable positions, and sometimes in positions where they don't have a lot of choice or no choice because of that. So I also, I would then suggest that we try to, before I hand it over back to Ipshita for wrapping us up quickly, I would then suggest we just do a round. If speakers are up for it, if you could sum up in one word or two, if you can, what would you feel would be the role of the summit in driving, in tackling some of the issues that we're talking about today? If you can speak to the structural issues, great, but I just wanted to flag that question. And I'm sure it's a continuing conversation that we'll continue to have in other sessions as well. So if it's okay with everyone, I would then go over the same order of the speakers. So Asha, I would go first to you, then Carmen, and then back to Christine. But as I said, just a couple of words because we are really out of time, unfortunately. Thank you. Aisha.
Yes. If the resilience with our network gender.
Resilience. Thank you. Carmen, what would be your 2 words, if you can?
I think that this is a very important session, although limited about the time, because this topic must have a platform, a stage, and this is a stage for media, a stage for feedback, a stage for further maybe to evolve, develop collaboration, whatever, even just to listen to each other. In this is the importance, I think.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's always challenging. I find it always frustrating when I play a moderator role to manage the lack of time. But I think we managed to get through quite a lot. Thank you so much for that. And Christine, what would be your final words on this topic and how it links to our joint role as a global summit?
Resilient voices.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I feel very proud and I said humble to be amongst the very wise and a powerful group. Thank you so much for all of you. I'll hand that back over to Pshita with thanks for organizing the session. And normally very invisible, but very important. So thank you so much.
So thank you both, Mariana and Pshita, and also my colleagues, Christine and Aisha. Thanks a lot. It was an honor to be part of it.
Thank you so much. And with this, we come to the end of this session and all the sessions for today. We look forward to meeting you all tomorrow. Tomorrow's session starts with 3 similar member-led sessions in the morning. Then we have a plenary, which will be on localizing disaster risk financing, and then again another set of 3 member-led sessions in parallel like today. So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow once again at 12 noon GMT, and have a good day for the rest of the day that is ahead of you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.